Show of hands for everybody who's watched a TED Talk or one of the RSA films. Go on, it's one hand, two hands. Somebody's got two hands up. Brilliant. Keep your hands up if you've seen one of my heroes, people like Ken Robinson, Seth Godin, Guy Claxton. No, not quite so many. Okay. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the RSA. This is a pirate broadcast brought to you by Steamco. I'm just a dad. I've got my Obey and the Posse hat on, my New York baseball cap. I've got my Keith Haring I Love Art logo on because I'm here today because of one person. I'm here today because of the inspiration of one person. That one person is the guy I just mentioned there, Seth Godin. Sir Ken Robinson, Professor Guy Claxton have helped, but Seth Godin gave us the line, #ArtConnects. Art is what we call it when what we do might connect us to somebody else. And believe it or not, but if I press a couple of little buttons here, we have hopefully got, let's have a look. We have hopefully got Seth Godin actually live on stage or on Zoom with a few books. I'd have thought Seth might have done a bit better than a few bookcases, but we have actually got Seth Godin live doing a talk about his new book, The Practice, for the RSA. So I'm going to go straight to that now. No more from me. Let's go to Seth Godin live from the RSA.
Your productivity is astonishing. You've been a go-to expert and thought leader on marketing for now an entire generation. So it's hard for me to believe that your practice had ever slipped. What happened?
Well, resistance is real. I was talking to our friend Steve Pressfield earlier today. Resistance is that fear that we have that it won't work this time, that we have passed our moment, that people won't get the joke, that we don't have what we need. And one of the things, you mentioned the TED Talks. When I gave my first TED Talk, they hadn't put any of them online. And when they put them online, they didn't ask us first. They just did it because Chris knew that we were such egomaniacs that no one would complain, and no one did. But when you're giving a TED Talk for 300 people, it's different than when you're giving one for 3 million people. The feeling shifts. And for me, what happened was, most of the work that I was seeking to do in places like marketing, I had done. And I didn't want to just do encores. I didn't want to play covers of myself. And so where do you find the open territory, the fresh powder? How do you dive deeper into helping people? And that's why I, 5 years ago, started the Akimbo workshops, which are now an independent B Corp. And the idea there was, maybe it's more than 3 hours with a book. Maybe it's 100 days in community. And one of the workshops we built was about creativity and about getting out of your way and developing a practice. And what I saw was that there was work left to be done. There were things that needed to be said. And it wasn't Seth Godin, the marketer, talking. It was Seth Godin, the person who on a good day has a practice, talking. And it took me 2.5 years to make that workshop. And then I got to test it on 1,000 people over the course of 100 days. And I learned a lot from that, which most authors don't get the privilege of doing. So I wrote the book for me, and then I wrote the book for them. And now, as long as there's a book, we might as well share it with more people.
Well, I'm envious because I think every author has had the experience of saying, I've just finished my book tour, and now I wish I could rewrite the book because now I understand what I was trying to say. And you actually, it sounds like, did the tour before the book.
Correct. And you've had the luxury of teaching in front of people at Wharton for a long time, and you know which lines work and which ones don't, because you're working it out every day. And if you're working at home and sitting in front of the computer, sometimes you drink your own Kool-Aid, or sometimes you don't believe the stuff that's works is going to work. And the magic of these workshops is like what's the panopticon, like the panopticon. The prison guard who can see down on everyone. I could watch all of the interactions without being in the room. And that was truly creepy and fascinating at the same time.
Well, the book is vintage Godin. Granted, it's a new topic and a new domain for you, but it also brings some of your signature strengths to the table. It's full of practical wisdom, right? So I felt like reading it, I had multiple aha moments. And sometimes you've given me the language for a practice I already do, but haven't been able to describe. In other cases, you've opened my eyes to a practice that I've never tried. And so I want to dig into the meat of the book a little bit. Tell me, what is the practice? It's actually a series of practices.
Right. So it starts with this, that there's no guarantee that any creative work we're going to do is going to work. The subtitle is Ship Creative Work, because if it doesn't ship, it doesn't count. And too many people die with whatever they have still left inside. Creative, because if it's been done before and there's a manual, it's not creative. And work, because we have to do it even when we don't feel like. And that last part is really important because it undermines this toxic mythology of authenticity, this toxic mythology of I need to find my calling. Neither one of those things is real. Those were invented fairly recently to explain why we are tired of doing our work, because we can't just say my muscles are sore from digging this ditch. It's the other muscles are sore from being on call to do this creative work. But my argument is, even though there's no guarantee, a practice will always get you a better outcome than not having practice. That showing up on the regular, understanding there's no such thing as writer's block, realizing that you're going to make mistakes, and divorcing the work from the outcome. All of these things add up to create a dynamic of productivity. And I made these things. These are, I call them writer's blocks. They're 1.5 inch square. I make them on my laser cutter. It takes 3 hours to make a set. And they just sit here in front of me to remind me of some of the basic principles of how we should deal with criticism. What should we understand about genre? Where do we go with trust? So these are all things that if this was plumbing or architecture, someone would have written down already. But for whatever reason, because of the mythology of creativity, no one wrote them down.
Well, that speaks to something that's bothered me about many people's creative practices for a long time, which is I feel like a lot of people, they criticize their own work as they create it. And so they can't get out of their own way, right? Every sentence in writing a book gets edited as it's being produced. Every brushstroke on a canvas, right, needs to be adjusted because it's not good enough. And at some point, you lose your creative spark because you're just evaluating as opposed to actually building. And I think part of the joy of this book is that it helps you get out of your own way. So walk me through how to do that.
Well, so maybe examples can get us started. Abby Ryan, who lives not far from you, made her career by painting an oil painting every day. And she did it in public. She sold them on eBay, $300, $400, $500 added up. It's a decent living. And now she's a respected grant-winning tenure-track professor because making an oil painting every day doesn't give you a lot of chances to get blocked. And what people are doing when they're editing themselves too much is they're sanding off all of the edges, even though they are not competent at that part of the work. The work that they are competent at in this moment is doing the first draft. And the first draft is different than the last draft. The other example is my friend, the late Isaac Asimov. And I worked with him on a project a long time ago. Isaac published 400 books back when that was hard. And
it's still hard for the record,
well,
for most of us mere mortals.
With the Kindle, you just press go and no one had to say yes, right? And I said, Isaac, how did you do that? And he showed me the manual typewriter in his little apartment near Lincoln Center. And he said, every morning I sit in front of this typewriter and from 6:30 to noon, I type. And then I'm done. And it doesn't matter if it's good writing or not. I just have to type. Because the subconscious in that moment says, well, if I have to type, I might as well type something good. And even though most of his stuff wasn't good, 6 hours a day of productivity was enough to produce 400 books. So what I'm saying to people, regardless of whether you're an eye surgeon or somebody who's trying to write a kid's book, is we compartmentalize the parts of the practice. And if we say, I have this bucket and I have to fill it up with ideas, or I have to fill it up with words, or I have to fill it up with this skill or that skill, then we don't we have to put ourselves on the spot, and we don't end up saying, I'm hiding now.
So let's go through the compartments then. It sounds like idea generation is at the beginning of the process. Do you, other than just having a target or an amount to fill, what are your other favorite practices in that realm?
Well, I think that we might get stuck waiting for a really good idea. And the number of super original ideas in the world that we're glad came along is very, very small. So if I think about something like Warby Parker, to bring up a sore topic, Warby Parker is not an original idea. They didn't invent eyeglasses. They didn't invent e-commerce. But what they were able to do was understand genre. And genre is the box our idea is going to fit in. And there are very few successful creative ideas that don't fit in any box. The box is not a trap. It's a platform. And if you have domain knowledge, if you've done the reading, if you understand what has come before, you can decide which genre you wish to inhabit. That's not a crutch, that's a requirement. And so once we know the form, once we have an idea of who it's for and what's it for, now we can start doing something that is productive. And again, we're going to do it wrong on the way to doing it right, but at least we're not a wandering generality. We're a meaningful specific, as Zig used to say, and being meaningful puts us on the hook. And so early in the book, I talk about being on the hook, which I love being on the hook, but so many people have been brainwashed to not be on the hook.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And it certainly tracks with the evidence we have in psychology that sometimes quantity is the best path to quality, right? If you can just generate a big enough haystack, you're probably going to find a needle in it. But that also goes to one of the challenges, which is evaluating our own ideas. So at some point you have to decide, okay, I just created a first draft. Is this something worth refining into a final draft? Is this something worth eventually shipping? And I have a former student, Justin Berg, who's found that we are notoriously bad judges of our own ideas. Sometimes we throw them out the window too soon, but maybe even more often we fall in love with garbage. And I think anybody who's watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, there's that moment at the end of the show when all 5 sharks or dragons have rejected the idea and said, this is terrible, I forbid you to ever pursue this. And then the camera cuts in close and the entrepreneur says, oh, but I know better and this is going to be the next hit. And it just breaks my heart to watch that happen. What can you share with us about how to avoid those moments and how to know if our ideas really have potential?
So criticism is a skill, and most people aren't very good at it. That learning to become good at giving incisive feedback is a practice in itself, and most people around us aren't very good. And you are probably not good at doing it for yourself. And, it's interesting. Some of the sharks are terrible at it, and they're just amusing. But if you can find somebody who actually has that experience and is good at it, it's gold. And we need to seek those people out, to reward them, to embrace them, because they're the ones that are going to help us figure out what is worth bringing forward and what's not. Not your job right now. Your job right now is to make the work, not decide whether to publish the work. Now, in the internet world, there are no filters anymore. You want to put on YouTube, you can put it on YouTube. And so we have this challenge of, if there is no one to applaud me and no one to criticize me, how will I learn from this? And that's where the idea of the smallest viable audience comes in, of figuring out which group. So your colleague Dan Ariely's work with the Bionicles has stuck with me for a long time, where they pay some college students, apparently are the only people in psychology experiments, but they pay these college students to put together Bionicles. And then they sit in front of the investigator, and the investigator is taking them apart while they're putting them together. Students who watch their Bionicles ripped to pieces are much less likely to sign up to do more than ones who are simply watch their pieces get put carefully into a box. It's an inherent form of criticism to have someone tear your Bionicle apart. So we have to be super careful. Who are we bringing this to? And this early in my career was a huge problem for me, because the circle of people who could look at my ideas before I invested the next cycle were incompetent at giving feedback, and I listened to them. And I was heartbroken and disheartened, and all the words with heart in them. And it was only when I found my colleague Michael Cater and a couple other people that I got good feedback. So yeah, we need to be in the right circle of people. The right circle of people who say yes when they should say yes, and who say no when they should say no.
That's helpful. And, I think one of the things that's striking to me about that guidance is it feels like in a lot of cases, people end up, we've all seen versions of, okay, you only gravitate toward your yes men and your yes women who cheerlead for you, or on the flip, you only go to your harshest critics who tear your work apart too soon. And so your guidance, it sounds like, is to find the people who see your potential, but also are willing to tell you the truth.
So let's think about John Hammond for a second, who doesn't get nearly enough credit. Try to imagine someone who in one career discovered Benny Goodman, Aretha Franklin, Bob Dylan, and Bruce Springsteen. One guy, right? So what does it mean to be in the music business for 50 years and discover those people? Well, he had good taste. What does it mean to have good taste? It means you know what the audience wants 10 minutes before they do. And I actually spent a month of my life trying to chase a definition of good taste. I couldn't find one on the internet, so I made that up. But it really resonates with me to know what the audience wants 10 minutes before they do. And he could turn to Dylan or Springsteen or Aretha Franklin and say, when you go this way, it's more likely to accomplish what you want than when you go that way. And every once in a while, someone comes along who has good taste about their own work. But in my experience, that person is usually nonverbal in their narrative about it. So I interviewed Diane von Furstenberg years ago, and she developed the wrap dress, which got her on the cover of Newsweek magazine. It was the most successful thing of its kind. And then the rest of her career, she just relied on this inherent good taste. And almost all the time she was wrong because she couldn't describe it in a way that other people could hear whether she was being true to her compass, right? And I think learning to put words behind your good taste is super rare and a worthwhile thing if you hope to give yourself or others feedback.
So a couple of reactions. First, I love your definition of good taste, knowing what the audience wants 10 minutes before they do. I think that's so compelling. And I think we could even judge meta taste by whether people recognize that as a good definition of taste. Second thing I'd say is this idea of translating your taste into words. Another way I might think about that is basically trying to make your intuition more conscious as opposed to subconscious.
Well said.
I've always thought about intuition as subconscious pattern recognition. And whenever people say, follow your intuition or trust your gut, no, maybe you should articulate your intuition, figure out whether the patterns behind it that you recognized in the past are relevant to the present situation. And there's actually a term for this in psychology. It's called referential processing, which is basically the ability to translate images into words, more or less, and vice versa. So like a great art critic has amazing referential processing because they can look at a painting and then they can describe with language, okay, here's what emotion that evokes, and here's why the artist's choices will do that. I have zero ability to do that. Apparently I am all verbal, and I can look at a painting and say, yes, I like the colors in it. I have no ability to deconstruct it. And you are one of the people who just excels at referential processing. I think it's been one of the gifts that's really propelled a lot of your work is you take things that resonate with people visually and you explain them verbally. Can you teach me how to do that? Or can you walk me through what your practice is for doing that?
Well, you're very kind, and I love this.
And actually, Seth, if you want a concrete example, I'd love to hear how you came up with that definition of taste, even because it fits the bill.
This is a brilliant riff on your part, referential processing. I'm just going to take enormous, angry exception with your word gift, because Cory Doctorow says we call it a gift when the person who has a skill doesn't realize they've been working on it for a really long time. because it's not a gift, it's a skill, and it's learnable. And the way we learn it is by practicing it poorly until we can do it better, the way we learn every other skill. So I grew up with amazing parents, and my mom was the first woman on the board of the Albright Knox Art Museum in Buffalo, which is generally considered the best contemporary art museum in America, painting for painting. So I grew up looking at Max Bill and Jackson Pollock's and Moreau and everybody else. And what a docent is trained to do is tell a story about a work of art, and to tell a story in a way that triggers our conscious programming in addition to our subconscious, because then it locks in. And, you know, when I used to go on the road and give talks, my slides, 150 slides in one presentation, no words on any of them, because the picture goes to one part of your brain, my words go to the other part of your brain, they lock together. So in the case of the good taste example, I knew I needed to be able to teach the people in the workshop what it meant to have bad taste, because I thought a lot of their failure was due to the fact that they were in love with something that they had made and nobody else was. And they needed to not take it personally. They needed to see what the audience was seeing. And so I tried 15, 20, 25 different ways to do it, and they failed until I stumbled on one that didn't fail. And I rarely get something right out of the gate. What I have is a practice that says education and learning are about using words and images to change people's minds. Let me keep throwing things at this until I figure out what's going to decode this problem for them. And I think that, you know, all someone has to do is read 2 pages of one of your books to see you do exactly the same thing.
I appreciate the sentiment. I will try to earn it, but I think you're right to take issue with my use of the term gift. I think you're right, it's a skill. At the same time, though, I think there's something about the language of gift that's also liberating. It's a little bit like the way Liz Gilbert talks about, you know, how now we say someone is a genius and we used to say that they have a genius. I think when you tell someone they have a gift for something, it frees them from the pressure to have to be able to effortfully produce it. And it signals that, in fact, maybe you've worked on it your whole life, but now I've seen you do it multiple times, right? There are times when you can just do it on command. And even though it took you a long time to build up that capability, right? I think it's a gift now. Can you live with that definition?
I can, as long as you're willing to put every single 7-year-old in the gifted and talented class at school.
That's fair.
Right? Because I don't want to take it away from anybody. I don't want to say to anybody, you can't do this because you don't have the gift.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So tell me, Ben, you say something really interesting in the book, something that at first I bristled at. And as I thought about it more, I said, damn it, I think he's right. You said that basically creating a practice for shipping creative work is not just an opportunity, it's an obligation. And I hated the idea of being obligated to anything, right? I come from a land where freedom is a quintessential value. And the moment anyone tells me I have to do anything, I want to do something else. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know, I am letting down a lot of people, but especially myself, if I don't see through or live up to my potential. So tell me more about that idea of obligation and why you wanted to make that argument, knowing I imagine that it's difficult for people like me to swallow.
Yeah, there's only one hack in the whole book, because I'm not a big fan of hacks. And the hack is we have I'm glad, thrilled, an aversion to hustling other people. We don't want to call people at home on their phone at night, in the middle of the night, to sell them insurance. We don't want to close talk somebody, you know, as they walk down the street. Good. I'm really glad about that. And so a lot of people hesitate to ship their creative work because they don't want to hustle, because they say, I don't like marketing. I don't want to pitch my work. If I could just find somebody else, let the editor do it, and then I'm done, right? Well, what if we turned it upside down and said, lifeguards aren't hustling people when they rescue them when they're drowning. Nobody who's a lifeguard says, I don't think I should jump in. They might want to drown. No, they're drowning. You go rescue them. It's a generous act. And that makes it much easier to jump in the water, because you're not jumping in the water for you. you're jumping in the water for them. And so I think by my definition of creative work, which is something human that will make something better for someone else, it's a generous act. Well, if you're a citizen, we have lots of things that we say to citizens in a free society are their obligations, because our culture, our community works because we are obligated to one another. I think Ayn Rand was a fool, and the way that she is interpreted by many, that being short-term selfish is the way to go, makes no sense to me. I think that we're communitarians, and if you are in community, then you have an obligation. And your obligation is if you have something to say or do or ship or paint or create that will make things better for other people, you shouldn't hold it back.
This may be a matter of semantics, but part of me wondered if it's easier to get people on board with the idea of a responsibility than an obligation. An obligation feels like I have no choice. A responsibility feels like I want to make the choice to do the right thing.
I've written it down. We'll change it in the next edition. Great point.
No, I have to say, from a rhetorical standpoint, I like your decision better because it really forced me to wrestle with this, right? And if you had said it's my responsibility, I would have said, yeah, you're probably right. And I enjoyed having to really grapple with it a little bit. So I wouldn't back off on challenging people. It was just something I wondered about. I have another question that relates a little bit to this dynamic, which is there is a fascinating mix of, I would say, encouraging and challenging in this book. And I think this is another theme that runs through your work. On the one hand, you're telling people, look, writer's block is a myth, right? You don't need to be held back by that. On the other hand, you need to show up every day and do the work. So, what are you doing, right? Get focused, get committed. How do you figure out when you're coaching people, when you're advising people, when you're trying to motivate people in your life, where to draw the line there?
So, we learned a lot building Akimbo out the way that we did, because the workshops are difficult. They're not like Udemy where you watch a bunch of videos. And what I discovered is the word enrollment. That education happens because you're trading a certificate for compliance. But learning happens when someone is enrolled in the journey. You know that the person who stays after class is way more likely to learn something than the person who raises their hand and says, will this be on the test? Someone says, will this be on the test? Joke's over, right? And so I made the decision a long time ago not to coach or consult for money. But if I'm talking to someone I care about, I can tell pretty quickly how enrolled are they in the journey. And if they're not that enrolled, then my job is sort of to reassure them, even though I don't believe in reassurance. But if they're enrolled, just like at CrossFit, blisters are on the agenda and blisters are part of the deal. So do you really want to get from here to there? Because I'm happy to describe to you what I see ahead of you, but it's going to be something you need to lean into, not something where I can show you an easy path.
That resonates. It reminds me of an Eilert Fishbach set of experiments where the basic question is, when you're trying to motivate yourself or somebody else to do something, do you focus on how much progress has already been made or how much progress there is left to go? And they basically found that it depends on the degree of enrollment or commitment. So if somebody is already committed, you highlight the gap, right? And you say, you've got a long road ahead of you. And then they're going to double down. Whereas if somebody's wavering, if they're not sure they're engaged or they're on board with the idea, you let them know they've already put in plenty of effort and they've gone part of the way. So, might as well keep going. That sounds very aligned with the way you thought about it.
I had not heard that before. I couldn't even guess where you were going with it. I think that's very cool.
Well, speaking of guessing, I have to ask you, Seth, we share a hobby, which is being magicians. That has been a practice since you were a kid, if I remember correctly. I love, what kind of author would just keep cards at his desk?
Not just cards with my cover on them.
Oh, even better. You designed a deck of cards around the back.
Every card has a slogan from the book, and spoiler alert, don't listen if you're not a magician. It's a stripper deck. Just saying. So
you're going to be able to find the card of choice at a moment's notice. I love it. Here I thought we were just going to get a regular flourish, but no, you gave us the practice as a deck. Tell me from your years practicing magic, what you learned about creativity in that realm that's transferred over to other work you've done.
Okay, so are you a Penguin Magic customer?
I have been at many points in my life.
Okay, so I have a trick that may or may not show up on Penguin Magic. I think it will. I've made the video for them. And what it's about is wonder, which is a riff I got from a guy named Harris III. Wonder is something that we all want as human beings. And wonder in the world of magic tricks is regularly trampled upon by people who yell out, "I know how you did that." Right? So, there was wonder for a moment, and then we did everything in our power intellectually to make it go away. And I think that adjacency to wonder is one of the most wonderful, magical things a human can do. And so the thing about Penguin Magic is the way they make money is they show you a trick, and the only way to make the wonder go away is to buy it. And that's how they make a living. And so I made a video for this and executed the trick fairly poorly and said, you already know how I did it. That's not the question. The question is, can we talk about making wonder in the world around you? And so what I've learned, I've taught magic to a lot of kids, is the kid who wants to yell out, "I know how you did that," has a long way to go to finding a journey toward wonder. And I don't want to know how it's done. I like living with that gap in between what I know and what is in front of us. I can still function as a civilized human being with a little bit of wonder in my life. And I think most human beings would agree that we've probably gone too far to stamping it out. And that really great magic, with or without playing cards, is about how can I bring a little bit of wonder back to the world?
I think that's so interesting because it seems like a tension between maintaining the wonder and also cultivating curiosity, right? So when I think about the George Lowenstein view of curiosity as an itch you have to scratch, right? The question mark in your knowledge where you desperately want the answer or the insight. There's a part of me that thinks, that's part of why I became a psychologist, right? As a kid, wanting to know the answer to magic tricks and reading them in books. I had that same feeling when I was learning about psychology and trying to figure out, okay, what can we better understand about how the mind works? Do you think it's possible to maintain wonder while still scratching the curiosity itch?
Oh yeah, because I think curiosity is about journey. That there's almost no one who's only curious about one thing. That as soon as the curious person finds out one thing, they quickly decide to go after the next thing. If you read David Deutsch's last couple books, which will blow the top of your head off, as soon as he has the answer to something like Hilbert's Hotel, the next chapter, he's back at being in the curious business again. And so I think one of the part of the hedonic treadmill of magic is you get release from the tension, and then 2 minutes later you can go be back on the treadmill.
Yeah, and that's a very nice resolution. Tell me also then, from a magic perspective, a lot of the practice is pretty boring compared to the astonishment of the trick, right? I know a lot of magicians who love to perform and they hate to practice. Do you have any guidance or insight about how to bring intrinsic motivation into an activity that lacks it? I think that's at the heart of why a lot of people struggle with the practice.
It's funny. For the last 10 or so books I did, the worst day was the day I found out it was a bestseller of the whole journey.
Why?
Because it's not why I wrote it. And it's when I still remember the day someone came and handed me a piece of paper in the middle of a conference that a book exceeded expectations. And I actually started to cry because nothing happened for me. I got no joy out of the news. And I realized that spot of my quest, the ego part of it, had been extinguished and I wasn't going to have it again. And that this idea, do you know who I am? Never makes us feel better. right? The person who's had a TED talk that's been seen 3 million times and doesn't know why it hasn't been seen 4 million times. That's like, it's not going to make us better. And so when I talk to people, like, why does Bob Dylan live in a bus? The guy has $200 million in the bank and a Nobel Prize. He lives in a bus to get to the next gig. Because for him, it's not about, I won, it's about, I get to play. So if you want to get to play, I have really good news, which is you get to play, you don't have to win. But if you want to win, I have bad news, which is you're probably not going to win. And the only way to get there is to do the work anyway.
This is like the Joe Heller, Kurt Vonnegut story about I've gotten one thing the rich person will never have, the knowledge that I've got enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder though if you're being too harsh on the person who celebrates the bestseller, because in the world of creativity, we have very poor measures of impact, right? There are days when I think, look, if we were doctors, we would know when we're saving lives, right? If we were engineers, we would know when we built a product that somebody really directly benefited from. In the creative world, impact is much more ambiguous. And so I think sometimes bestseller is a signal to people, hey, you know what? That work actually was useful to someone, or people took an interest. Is that all ego, or is that just, for me, it feels like I just want to know that my time was well spent.
I don't know if it's an ego thing, but I think it's not, at least for me, helpful. I don't think oncologists are significantly worse at being a doctor than podiatrists, but oncologists have a lot of patients who die. And if you want to write a New York Times bestseller, give me $80,000. I'll show you how you can buy a slot on the list, right? It's not hard at all because the list is corrupt. So easily measured metrics, whether someone died or you made a list, I find really shallow, because you can do really great work and only 1,000 people bought that book because it didn't hit the slipstream right, or it came out on the same day as Barack Obama's book, right? And so instead, for me, it's show me one person. Show me one person who you turned a light on and who they turned a light on. I want to be measured by what the people who learned from me taught other people. And I feel like that's a network effect that I could be proud of. But I fired publicly the New York Times a long time ago because I didn't want to be attached to an outcome that I knew how to game, because I'm a good marketer. I know how to make a book that is going to sell more copies than this one, much to my publisher's chagrin. But that's not what, I'm not in the cutting down trees business. I'm in the, did I find something for the people I seek to serve business? And I think the same thing is true for a palliative care physician, where every single patient is going to die. They got to measure the right thing.
I think that's beautiful. It reminds me of something I found in my early research in grad school, that if you looked at people's perceptions that their jobs made a difference, the depth of impact was much more important than the breadth, right? It was not how many people am I helping, it's how much good am I doing for each person that I have the privilege to help. And it seems like that's your compass.
And I think, to let you off the hook a little bit, it's yours too, because I've seen what your students have said about you. And I've seen, when the RSA says, hey, Adam, you want to do something like this, you're not keeping score of some easily measured metric. You're saying, I'm in community, and this is a thing that I'd like to do. What a privilege we all have. We don't dig ditches for a living. And we have this internet thing, and instead of watching cat videos, we're trying to make something better with it. And we won't have this moment for long, but as long as we have the moment, I think we need to lean into it.
I think so too, Seth. Well, it's been such a delight to have a chance to talk with you, as always. I think the practice is such a great, I dare I say, gift to the world of both creative people who struggle to ship their work, but also people who don't realize that they're creative and do have a responsibility, maybe even an obligation, to share their ideas with the world. And I think you've done us all a great service by bringing that gift to us.
Thank you, Professor. Such a privilege to talk to you.
Blimey, that finished in a bit of a hurry. I've got to plug myself back in now. So you can't make this up, can you? You really can't make this up. My goodness. So literally, I'm just a fellow. I'm one of 35,000 fellows at the RSA. And I can honestly say that Seth Godin is possibly one of the most inspirational people I've come across, one of the most inspirational people I know. Met him very briefly once. He doesn't really want to have an awful lot to do with people, which is his prerogative, and that's absolutely totally cool with me. Let me see if I can get that video back, because 6 years ago, believe it or not, what's happened now? Well, it's all gone a bit Pete Tong, isn't it? I don't know if Seth understands phrases like Pete Tong. It's kind of like sort of Cockney rhyming slang for
Good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm chairing this session. My name's...
That's interesting. They've gone back to somebody else has started chatting. That looks like our good friend Guy Claxton, actually, doesn't it, on stage there? Is that Guy Claxton just about to say a few words?
Guy Claxton. I'm a cognitive scientist of a particular stripe and an educational provocateur in my day job. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here to the RSA.
Well, trust Guy Claxton to gate crash my pirate takeover of the RSA. This isn't live, this is a recorded event.
Before we begin,
he's saying everywhere the toilets
could you make sure that your mobile phones are switched to silent?
Well, let's put you to silent, Guy. So that's Guy Claxton. You just can't make this up. I often say that serendipity is my rocket fuel. Rockets have been... This is just remarkable. I don't care whether Seth sees this or not. He's a busy guy. He's probably gone back to his kitchen, was hiding his books on his bookshelf, because it's such a shame, isn't it? Let's face it, it's such a shame that Seth Godin, this amazingly inspiring creative guy, does a Zoom call to launch his book, and he does it at the RSA, or he does it with the RSA, and can't even put a graphic up. Bless him. I mean, obviously he can't be good at everything, and he's very good at what he does. What I want to do now is just to cut back to a moment in the Great Hall at the RSA from 6 years ago. 6 years about now. Gosh, I wonder if it is about now. I'll have to look that up. I wonder if we can look that up on here. Let's have a look. I wonder if it says on the bottom here. Let's have a look. Oh, tell me it was today. Tell me it was today. If it was 6 years ago today, that would just be remarkable, wouldn't it? RSA, founded in 1754, British-based organisation committed to finding practical solutions to today's social challenges through its 27,000 strong global network of fellows. I believe it's now 35, and I would hope that the COVID thing is going to have maxed that, to be quite honest. I'm going to look that date up, because it could be that it was literally 6 years ago, because just before that I went to New York as a guest of an amazing guy, actually, a guy called Graham Brown Martin, who published this book, which you must check out, Learning Reimagined. And this is a book that features people like Sir Ken Robinson, it features Noam Chomsky, it features Glenn Matlock, it features Seth Godin. Beautiful, beautiful book. This is the collector's edition. And Graham spent a whole year travelling around the world. He got a budget, massive budget, off some people in the Middle East, and basically he travelled the world interviewing amazing people like Seth. If you want to know about education, Seth did a brilliant talk, TEDx, I don't know, youth or something in Brooklyn, where he launched his whole manifesto around education. Now, if something like Ken Robinson, Sir Ken Robinson writes a book about creative schools, he calls it Creative Schools. He's an academic. If Seth Godin writes a book about creativity in schools, creativity in education, creativity in society, reimagining education, he doesn't use any of that nonsense. He's a marketing guy, he's a behavioural economics guy, he's an insight-driven guy. He understands people and what makes them tick and what makes them do. And he called his paper, Stop Stealing Dreams. Yeah? Creative schools will stop stealing dreams. Which one is going to make a parent bang their fist on the table and say they're not stealing the dreams of my children? We actually did a little talk last week, Dream Stealer, because we've considered that Dominic Cummings, not going to get too political here, but let's face it, he's newsworthy at the moment. Dominic Cummings is a bit of a dream stealer. 10 years ago, Dominic Cummings, Michael Gove at the Department of Education, they reformed education in the way that they wanted to do it, against their ideology and their plans, which is what you do if you run a government. If you have a government, you use education to educate the world, the country, to fit into your plan, into your ideology. And they narrowed the curriculum down. They took art and creativity out of it. They had an accountability framework for head teachers and schools that meant that head teachers are paid and judged and keep their job by doing what they're asked to do, which is great. Unless art is one of the things they're judged to do. And art wasn't one of the mandatory subjects in a thing called the EBAC and Progress 8. So that many head teachers, because they're not judged on it, they haven't got the budget for it, parents don't value it, community doesn't seem to value it, society doesn't seem to value it in some cases, they drop the arts. Jeff Barton, the head of the Association of School and College Leaders, who's basically the boss of all the head teachers in his union, He said that they did some research with the BBC and found that 9 out of 10 schools in Britain had cut one or more art subjects in the last few years. That is a direct result of Michael Gove and Dominic Cummings' education reforms. So whatever they did that for, we believe that has led in some cases to an education crisis. Well, we've got a funding crisis, we've got a well-being crisis, we've got a teacher retention crisis. Yeah, things are tough in our schools. I'd say that's a crisis, education crisis. If you did a plan, if you'd been running schools for 10 years, I think you have to accept some responsibility for that crisis. We believe that's led to a hashtag creativity crisis because creative subjects aren't being taught, they're not being taught, learned, kids aren't interested, the teachers aren't running them. It's going to deliver a creativity crisis. Creativity. It's Great Britain, it fuels the economy 130 billion a year before the lockdown. So why would we teach creativity out of children? Why don't we want these skills for our industries and for our economy? Department of Culture, Media and Sport, Digital Culture, Media and Sport, Her Majesty's Treasury. Just a month ago, we had to go through an evaluation process with them for them to consider if STEAMco, the non-profit community enterprise that I run, inspired by Seth, inspired by Sir Ken, inspired by Professor Claxton there, we had to prove or convince them that we were viable. Well, we hardly ever made much money and we were only just starting to make some money to tick along. We're non-profits, we can't make a profit, but we like to be able to pay ourselves. I remortgaged my house 3 times in the last 2 years just to keep going. This is tough, you know, and the schools have got less money now. All the schools we're working with now have got even less money because they've had to spend it all on PPE and COVID stuff. So, yeah, we believe there's a creativity crisis, so we're standing up for that. And I don't really want to go into democracy crisis, which everybody, I think if you consider there has been a democracy crisis, I mean, yeah, I think whatever you believe, whether you think it's right or wrong, there's a crisis in our democracy. The Brexit Remainer thing is contentious. It's upset a lot of people. Having to shut down Parliament, all that sort of stuff is crisis stuff. Dominic Cummings, Michael Gove laid the plans in place for that with a whole bunch of networks and organisations that they work with. Haven't quite worked out how some of them are funded yet. Ross McGill, Teacher Toolkit, did a good blog on that actually about the fact that an organisation, I think it's called Policy Exchange, they came at the bottom of a transparency index for how these organisations are funded. We called this out 4 or 5 years ago. Nobody believed us. Just yesterday, I think it was the Daily Mail, had a double-page spread on how all this dodgy funding is working, how people are being given money to do stuff they've not got the credentials to do without due diligence. There's a thing called the Nolan Principles, whereby every penny that's spent in government is supposed to be assessed against the Nolan Principles. 9 or 7 points about what is good and what's right and how things should happen. So yeah, democracy crisis, health crisis. Let's not go there. Dominic Cummings, he did his bit, didn't he, going to Durham, and it's apparent. God blimey, I don't like picking on someone. I don't like the ad hominem comments, but whatever. So that's really where we're at. And 6 years ago, as I say, I'm going to stop talking for a minute and just show you this little film that I made 6 years ago at the RSA. I don't even know if Seth's ever been to the RSA, but I have, because I'm a fellow. I'm a proud fellow of the RSA. So let's cut to that and check this out. Why isn't that working? Show of hands for everybody who's watched a TED Talk or one of the RSA films. Go on, one hand, 2 hands. Somebody's got 2 hands up. Brilliant. Keep your hands up if you've seen one of my heroes, people like Ken Robinson, Seth Godin, Guy Claxton. No, not quite so many. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've done something about what you see. 2 or 3. A lot of talk at the RSA, a lot of people talk about talking shops and people who want to do well, but what they actually do is something else. And what we want to do with STEAMco is walk the talk, not just talk the talk. We want to make a real difference. Joe Halgarten in the RSA Journal here talked about the fact that millions of talks about creativity in education, the sort of talks that Ken Robinson's talked about, but there's been very, very little concerted action to actually make a change. And in fact, the arts and creativity are constantly being ripped out of things. So 4 years ago, I was made redundant, fantastic. Went to Camp Bestseller, which is like Glastonbury for kids, saw creativity in a field inspiring children. And I also saw the Ken Robinson talk and thought, hang on, what are we going to do about this? So my wife, Amanda, and Jackie, we brought creativity into our schools. We powered our community to inspire children with creativity by running a whole range of different activities. We've taught every child in the school to code Raspberry Pis. We've built electric cars that we've raced at Goodwood. We've done 3D modelling. We 3D printed our headmistress. I smuggled this thing back from America the other week. This is a paper rocket. I hope we're not going to take the plaster off the roof, but let's have a go. 3, 2, 1, fire that. There you go. That actually goes 300 feet in the air when we put 220 PSI into it. Thanks for that. We're having an awful lot of fun. We're inspiring communities. We bring parents, creatives, and the whole community into schools. 6 creatives typically from outside organisations. 60 parents, the parents who wouldn't normally be involved in school-led activities. We've been in Wired, we've been on the BBC, we've been in Al Jazeera. The key thing we want to do is bring creative ambassadors, creative people we're calling inspirators, people like Paul Smith, James Dyson, Johnny Ive, Heston Blumenthal into schools as well. So what can you do? Well, what you can do is you can come and see us in the corner in a moment. We've got a simple little postcard here. If you know somebody in a school, you've got children in a school, you're interested in school, you're creative, you haven't got children, whatever, there is something for you to do to connect your creativity with schools. Get one of these postcards, go to the website and sign up with whatever skills or whatever you can add and whatever you can offer. We're trying to get funding together. There's a national lottery funding round coming round next year, the Power to Change Fund, which we were trying to get hold of. Last week, we had verbal commitment from one of the UK's biggest companies to sign up. So thank you very much for listening. We're STEAMco. We're powering communities to inspire children with creativity. Well, there you go. That's a talk I did 6 years ago at the RSA. We've got to walk the talk. Creativity in education, we've got to walk the talk. I didn't plan this. I only saw it like 10 to 1 that this was happening, which is why this is all very, very random, which is why I'm suddenly on stage, on our pyramid stage, which we used for a pop-up Glastonbury back in the summer. Yeah, that film was about walking the talk. And tonight, when I get my act together, we're launching #TalkWalkers20. #TalkWalkers20. That's going to be a tribute. It's going to be a podcast series, a tribute to Sir Ken Robinson, who inspired us to start STEAMco, who inspired me to start STEAMco. And we're going to be launching that tonight. We're also launching a Patreon, a fundraising thing, because in 2022, the British government have allocated over there, British government over there in Parliament, and over there in the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, or actually they're over there. They've got £120 million for a national festival of creativity and innovation. We were told about that last year. We have been getting very excited and looking to be part of that all that time. And then it turned out that we didn't get through. They were looking for 30 companies, organisations to be part of a big team, and they really wanted big funding bodies as far as we could see. And we weren't really in the frame for that. So we are doing our own #Festival22. We are going to raise £1 million for 2022. I haven't done the maths yet, but we want to put 20, maybe we don't need £1 million. Yeah, we do. 20 times 50, yeah, we need £1 million because we want to put 20 people like me on the roads and on the streets of the UK, in Northern Ireland, in Wales, in Scotland, in England, with our drop trucks. And we want to travel up and down the country into communities, running creativity days in schools, running creativity pop-ups in communities, and we're going to fly the pirate flag. Let me tell you about some amazing books. Be More Pirate. There you go, Seth. If you haven't seen that, you need this. Sam Colifilende. I'd rather be a pirate than join the Navy. So we're going to be flying some pirate flags. Another amazing guy here, How to Change the World, John Paul Flintoff. Look, he's got green on the front of his book, so it means you can't see me when I hide behind that. But this is my favourite. My favourite Seth Godin books. I mean, Seth did this, What to Do When It's Your Turn. He sent me a couple of cases of that, which is very sweet of him. And that's a good book to be checking out on sort of getting off your backside and doing something. But this is the book. I picked this up, actually. And Seth's done that in green just to confuse me as well and to confuse you. Green's a bit see-through on my system. Maybe so I can just tweak that out. So here we go. Let's tweak that out just a little bit. So it's not really, so you can see something there. That's okay. The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin. This is great. How high will you fly? The Icarus Deception. Art is frightening. Art isn't pretty. Art isn't painting. Art isn't something you hang on the wall. Art is what we do when we are truly alive. If you've already decided that you're not an artist, it's worth considering why you made that decision and what it might do, what it might take to unmake it. If you've announced that you have no talent in anything, then you're hiding. Art might scare you, art might bust you, but art is who we are, and it's what we do and what we need. An artist is someone who uses bravery, insight, creativity, and boldness to challenge the status quo. And an artist takes all of it, the work, the process, the feedback from those we seek to connect with very personally. Art isn't a result, it's a journey. It's a challenge of our time. The challenge of our time is to find a journey worthy of your heart and your soul. And that is why in 2 weeks we are going to Leeds, to a school community to run a creativity festival. And this is a film we borrowed off Amazon UK. You might not have seen this if you're in the US. One of the most fantastic Christmas ads we've certainly seen for a long time. Hold tight.
Good evening. All schools across the country will close until further notice as coronavirus reached 100.
It might not work. Primary. Where is Chris Dyson? Can we have Chris Dyson on this stage, please?
As I said, we're in the toughest area in Leeds, and yet our school children, the children that sit on the interview panel for the Northern Ballet, because I want to give them an opportunity that they've never sort of had before. And it shows if you believe in the people, you believe in these teachers, you believe in these kids, absolutely anything is possible.
That was a bit annoying, wasn't it? I didn't really want that to finish. I wanted to get those credits up at the end, and I've got a horrible feeling that, because I did that in PowerPoint, it's not going to work very well, is it? That's a shame. So in 2 weeks, we're doing the AIM High 20 Festival and UK tour with Parklands Primary up there in Leeds. We're going to be doing live streamed assemblies in schools across the country. We are going to be celebrating the message of this, aiming high, flying high, how high will you fly? And this lovely book here, the last book I'm going to plug today, My Dad's a Birdman by David Almond. The story of a dad in Newcastle who covers himself in feathers and bits of wood and pretends he's a bird because he wants to fly across the River Tyne. But not just because of that. He wants to inspire his daughter to be creative, to not be afraid to make mistakes, to not be ashamed of being a bit of an idiot in a high-vis jacket and a silly hat. This is cool 6 years ago when I got it in New York with that rocket kit. Check this out. Dad is building a pair of wings, eating flies and feathering his nest. Auntie Doreen is getting cross and making dumplings. Mr. Poop is parading the streets shouting, louder and louder. And even Mr. Mint, the head teacher, is getting in a flap. And watching all this is Lizzie. She's missing her mam and looking after Dad and thinking, how beautiful the birds are. What's behind it all? It's the Great Human Bird Competition, of course. Oh my goodness. And you know what? I've just decided this morning I'm going to go to Leeds tomorrow. Tomorrow morning I'm going to go to Leeds and I'm going to go and see my friend Chris Dyson, and we're going to live stream an assembly with him up there. and we are going to go and see those kids, and we're going to tell them about the amazing event that we're going to be doing for them. The incredible event that we are going to be doing at Parklands Primary on the 4th to the 6th of December, 3-day festival. We've got amazing acts lined up. We're getting the community involved. We're live streaming it. Even if we're still in lockdown, I won't have to leave the house. Do you want to know how I'm doing this, actually? Is anybody interested? Is anybody interested in all the nonsense that's going on here? Shall I show you what we've got here? So here I am. Look, I'm in front of a green screen with some computers. And this might sort of have some relevance to what Seth was talking about, really, because the technology is no longer the barrier. I've got a fairly complicated setup here. I've got to admit, this is quite complicated what I've got here. So basically, I've got 3 laptops over here, which I use. So if people want to call in, they call in on one of them. Get rid of that. They call in on one of these 3 laptops. I've got a special audio system there, so I can mix the audio in and out and preview it. I've got a video mix in here. I've got a little iPad. This is super cool. Check this out. Look. How cool is this? It's an iPad with lots of functions on it. So I can adjust the volume. I can slide these knobs up and down here and control the volume. Then I can also press some buttons here and then go to different settings and presets. That's really cool. Although some bloke told me last week I can get all this in a very expensive computer, so I'm going to save up for one of those now. And then I've got a camera there. There's my messy office, my messy desk, and there's a big screen at the back. So if you find me not quite looking you in the eye, it's because I'm looking over there. There we go. And there you go. If anybody's watching from New York, that's what Paddington looks like. There we go. Look, got some bit of building going on. Shame I haven't got a builder out there. Nice blue sky. Got a lovely blue sky today. It's fall in London. Isn't that lovely? So there we go. That's what we're talking about here today. So let's see if I can get this back to where I kind of sort of was. Yeah, it's sort of kind of back, isn't it? I've just upset all my settings now. I need to let's get number 7 on there. Get rid of that. There we go. That's not the right one, is it? That should be, that's 7. Oh, God, I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. Tonight we're doing a live stream. And you think I haven't been live streaming for a bit while, actually. And you know what? I think it gets you down a bit. You get a bit stale when you're not live streaming and talking to anybody. At least I'm talking to myself now. Is anybody logged on? There's a few people. Hello out there. You feel free to pop a message on. We'll pop it up on the screen if you want to. Tonight, we've got a very important event. It is with an artist who I've been working with for 5 years, a painter. We're all artists. Creatives are people whose art is their livelihood, so they deserve a living. So we're helping Malumba out, who's a painter. He's been very generous to us. And I'm just going to show you very quickly a little video. I don't know how long this video is. Let's see if I can get some audio on that. This is a promo of what Malumba's been up to.
She's blacked up. Yes, I've painted the Queen black because, in my opinion, I've always thought that the Queen would be quite pleased if she one day woke up black. Where my worry comes in, especially in the current state of the world, is what society would think about it. And I walk into the pub, and the pub went quiet, and this gentleman stood up, came to me, how dare you paint the Queen black? What an insult. I froze, and I just stared at him, and I said, well, what's wrong with me?
Don't you love it? So that's Malumba. He's got an art show just up the road in Queen's Park. So he's done the Black Queen. He's got an art show. He's got Donald Trump. It's called the Dictator's Garden. He's got Donald Trump, Mugabe, Stalin, Putin, all in there. And we're doing a live stream from the gallery. None of your bookshelf nonsense, Seth Godin, but we're doing it in a gallery, all socially distanced, COVID secure. We'll be wearing masks. We're all good boys. I've probably got a mask in my pocket here. Okay, we all know when to do what we're told. And we've got 3 amazing guests. We've got Isis, who is incredible. She's an art activist locally from North Kensington, as we call it here. You probably call it Notting Hill because you've seen the movie, but it's North Kensington in the shadow of Grenfell and the awful stuff there. But the power of art and creativity played its part there, as it does every day in the Portobello community, Portobello Radio, as you just saw there. So we've got Isis. She describes herself as an African warrior queen. We have got Malumba Tashika, our artist, whose show we'll be talking about. We've got an amazing lady who just walked. You won't believe this. Malumba's in his gallery. It's locked down, so nobody's allowed out or to walk around much. And somebody walked past and started chatting in the doorway. And it turned out that she ran away from school when she was 12. She's been an activist, an optimist for many, many years, and she now works with one of the world's biggest companies. You're not going to believe who she works for, what she does. It's just unbelievable. She knows, I think she knows personally some of the dictators that Malumba's talking about, because she's campaigned for people who are victims of brutalization, of imperialism, of brutality. So she's on the panel, 3 amazing people. We're hoping for one other person who might be able to join us as well, if that's not enough. So that's starting, actually we've said 5:30, but we've actually managed to get the gallery for another hour. So we probably, don't tell anybody, we're going to start at 6. We're going to have to keep everybody waiting for half an hour, get the crowd built up, show a few films, have a bit of a whatever. So that would be the first, so that's 5:30 till 6, and 6 till 7:30 is the actual discussion about hashtag decolonizing art, the world, the art world, and the implications of that. We're not going to nail it in an hour, no more than Ken Robinson gave a plan to solve creativity in education in his 19 minutes that that Chris Anderson from TED gave him. So that's what that's all about. Tomorrow, as I say, I'm off to Parklands Primary, and I want to give you all a massive, massive treat now. So sit comfortably, everybody sit back, because a dad in my son's school, I've got 2 boys now, they were 6 and 8 when I started this caper, and they're now, God knows what are they, 15 and 17, something like that. So how long have I been doing this? Since 6 to 15, yeah, 9, 10 years. Blimey. A dad in their school made a film for me about Steamco, and this is the world premiere. The world premiere. I hope you're watching. I hope you like this. Let me know what you think. Pop some comments up. It's all gone black because here we are premiering my new film by a dad in my son's school. Enjoy.
We're all born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up.
That wasn't a very good start, was it? Okay, Sam, I'm live, so keep it quiet. I shut the door. We are live now. Do you know what? Do I look like I care? Do I look like I care? Do I look like I care? So why didn't that work? It's because I'm playing the wrong flipping screen on there, and they were both black. As I say, this is what happens when you don't plan your session. So I'm going to rewind. In fact, yeah, there we go. Let's do that. This is all just beyond random now. Is anybody still there? Is anybody still listening? So let's just get a Seth Godin quote up for that moment, shall we? Let's get Seth Godin up to tell us what he thinks of that. And I've got to be careful here because he's going to play a banging tune which will get struck by Google copyright if we're not careful. But this film is off scale. This is a film that we made when we launched our Art Connect Festival, and it features, believe it or not, the Culture Minister. It's got a banging tune, a remix of a fantastic New York anthem. So maybe Seth will know this. I don't know if he does dancing and DJing and all that sort of stuff. Can't do everything, Seth. He's got his magic. So let's drop this. The first bit, anyway. What would Seth say if I told him, oh my goodness, Seth, I want to do some live streaming. I want to play a video.
It might not work, but here's the thing. The guy who invented the ship also invented the shipwreck. And either you're in or you're out. Either you want to play this game or you don't. Art doesn't work because we did something conventional and predictable, and here it is industrialized, right?
Now this is where I have to start talking.
Art works because we connect.
Because
So
I
the
don't
festival
want...
that we will be organising in 2022 is a festival of creativity in its broadest sense. So what we're looking for is events that will help to bring people together and show the value of art.
An event like this is absolutely overdue. Being from a working class family as well, we've never had access to the arts.
I think this is amazing, and we should encourage Nick to do more of this so that we can connect friends through art. It's actually amazing.
Well, a lot of schools have taken you here earlier, and I find that beautiful.
This book is going to change lives. There are 7 stories.
This is where I have to talk.
I love your passion. Please keep doing what you're doing, inspiring the kids. I think it's great.
not enough parents spending enough time with the kids. They leave them on the iPads and things like that, and I absolutely love it. Keep doing what you do, and I love your passion.
I have to be very careful here, because if the Google or the YouTube search engines hear this music, they'll strike it and we won't be able to play this video. So this is a sync today, so I'm going to talk over the vocal. You know the bass line. Good times, Noel Rogers, Mercury Ide. You have been so generous. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm going to make it happen for you, because what you're doing is, in the end, absolutely brilliant.
I had the idea of getting a big screen to come here and celebrate. And I did this thing called a crowdfund, and I said to lots of people, I only gave myself 24 hours, and you'll never do it.
Arts and creativity is absolutely everything, you know, to secure the jobs for the future.
Niall, what does collaboration mean to you?
For me, collaboration is everything. So my whole life is a collaboration.
So just to fill you in what on earth's going on there. So hashtag ArtConnects19 was last year. Hashtag Collaborate20 is this year. And hashtag InspireNation21 is next year. We want to get 3 drop trucks, 3 people like me on the road to prove this can scale and be sustainable. And it's not just a nutcase like me that's the linchpin, as Seth would say. And we're going to raise $1 million next year. We want to get £1 million to put 20 people like me, 20 Steamco drop trucks on the road to take Steamco, to take creativity, to take art out across the world. There you go. You thought one of me was too many, and there you go. There's 2. Let's just turn that down. We can have them going on, shall we? Here we go. So that's me talking at the back there. So, good job. We're in the same stuff. I have got more T-shirts, I've got to be honest. Oh, that is this event. Okay, that is today. So, blimey, how many music have we got now? So, God, I'm putting myself off now. Stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. So, bonkers, 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 bonkers. Okay, so let's go to a nice black screen over here, like that. Let's get rid of me and let's play that film. I'm not going to say another word after this. I'm going to play the new Steamco film by a dad from my kid's school, my son's school, Chris Sullivan, WAG Films Inc. Let's roll.
We're all born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. That was Pablo Picasso. And I think we've got to help our kids, all our kids, aim high in life. Not just high, but higher than high. We've got to help our kids find their passion, their art. So I'm Nick Claxton. I'm just a dad. I'm co-founder of Steamco. One day maybe I'll be the CEO, I don't know. So Steamco is a non-profit community enterprise that helps connect our kids with their art and our communities with their schools by running creativity days. And we want to get the whole community involved. We want people who've had kids, not had kids, got kids, whatever, to come and work with us to help us run these days.
It's magical.
What inspired me? Well, I saw a talk by Sir Ken Robinson. I read half a book called What's the Point of School? On what we should be teaching our kids. And I went to Camp Bestseller, which is really a Glastonbury for kids. And I thought, I want this in my kids' school. I've got a lovely little film my dad gave me of me when I was 1 and him with my first ever train set. And I show that to kids in schools all over the country. And how my dad gave me the greatest gift. He gave me my art. Because art is what we call it when what we do might connect us to somebody else. So art could be painting, it could be photography, it could be cooking, it could be coding, it could be dancing, it could be design, it could be DJing, it could be robots, it could be rockets. The fun, the excitement that we have making and firing rockets in schools is to be seen, to be believed.
This is the best day of my life.
This truck contains everything you need to run a creativity festival in a primary school. 30 coding kits with the BBC Microbit. We've got rocket making kits. We do cardboard challenge. We can do the egg drop. We've got a T-shirt printing machine so we can print I Love Art T-shirts. So the kids design their own logo, take a selfie. We've had thousands of posters of those done. That's with JR, French street artist JR. So we've got communities all over the country designing I Love Art logos, taking photos, and we sent them off to JR, and he's printed 1,000 of these off for us, which we're fly posting all over the country. So in lockdown, we got an Arts Council grant, and we built a green screen TV studio. We've been live streaming events all summer. We did a 3D Glastonbury event where we built a half-size pyramid stage, cardboard and code, and ran 3-day events. We had Martin and Gary Kemp. We had Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols on stage alongside community artists, dads and their kids. And we had a young lad from Leeds called Lenny who played his piano on stage, all virtual. And that's what we want to do. Lockdown's not going to lift in a hurry, and we're running festivals from a spare bedroom here in Paddington, but we need people involved. We want people to collaborate for creativity.
Fantastic work to see.
For me, collaboration is everything.
Elton John gave me the greatest gift. Actually, he made a film, I don't know if you saw it, with John Lewis, where basically he tells the story of how he was given a piano as a kid and worked hard and made literally $1 million. I saw that film, ripped it off, put our own subtitles on it, and Elton John retweeted it. It had 50,000 views in an hour, and I went on a 2-week UK tour from Cornwall all the way to Carlisle, showing that film, showing my train set film, talking to kids about art and creativity, letting off rockets, and inspiring schools across the country in our 12 days of Creative Christmas tour.
You've inspired one little boy in particular, a very quiet boy, and as that rocket shot into the air, we heard the words blast off come out of his mouth.
Innovation, technology, and dreams rocketing up to the sky.
The state education system, we have a lot of people feel it's been narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, focusing on teaching and testing of highly academic subjects, which are important, which are right for some kids, but it's not for everybody. And some kids come out of the education system literally broken. 9 out of 10 schools in Britain have reported cutting the arts in some way or another, which is a real tragedy. And we're going to lose that cutting-edge creativity that made Britain so famous. Creativity is Great Britain, after all. The ideal future for me would be a whole load of these trucks on the road with passionate, enthusiastic, committed, creative people, helping connect kids with their art and communities with their schools all the way across the UK. As Albert Einstein said, imagination can take us anywhere.
I would like to have steamed cold day in my classroom because we get to learn about what's inside stuff and things. I like science because you get to make stuff. You can describe people who do stuff, what's amazing.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of the creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created. I have a dream. I have a dream.